Being that it's 7 o'clock, we're going to call the meeting to order. Mr. Delaney, can you please read the Sunshine Law?
Pursuant to the requirements of New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was included in the annual meeting notice, which has been posted on the bulletin boards, filed with the Borough Clerk, and has been sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Independent, the Star Ledger, and the Two River Times.
Thank you. Please have a roll call.
Mayor Kennedy?
Here.
Council President Good?
Here.
Council Member Pacheco? Council Member Fotopoulos?
Here.
Council Member McDermott?
Here.
Council Member Davidson?
Here.
Council Member McNamara?
Here.
We also wanted to matter for record, we have a council-elect.
Sure, if you want to just make the announcement.
We have council-elect Rosarino and council-elect Ron Cavallini. That's Vegas as well. Everyone could please join me in the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everyone could please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of today being the 80th anniversary of the attacks on Pearl Harbor. Thank you. We'd like to just make an adjustment to the agenda. First, before we ask for council dialogue, I would like to have a motion, if possible, for R-238A for appointing the borough administrator to serve as the deputy borough clerk for the operations and purposes of the running this meeting.
Motion.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part. For purpose of?
Operating and running the meeting.
I'll take this one. Our borough code doesn't allow for a deputy borough clerk to be appointed for under 3 years.
Motion to adjourn then, because we don't have a quorum tonight.
Can we modify the resolution to make it temporary? Instead of deputy clerk?
Sorry.
Leslie's advising that would be fine, so if you want a motion for that.
Oh, I think Councilwoman already motioned, so.
I accept amending to make it temporary. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. Since I'm officially on the record as being here.
And for the record, 704, Councilman Pacheco, correct. Thank you. Okay, so before we open it to the public, I believe normally we just go around and see if there's any council members that have commentary or need anything tabled or pulled. I believe, Jay, you're asking for R-249-21 to be moved to the end of the meeting after the closed session. Is that your request?
That's correct.
After the closed session there, so
That's a request, yeah. So we'll need a motion to move that to the end. But I don't know if there's any others that we need to move or table. So,
Excuse me, Mayor, can you speak up a little bit, please?
can you hear me now?
Just vaguely.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Mayor, 21921, we can have that. We can either discuss it now or discuss it separately. Does I have an update on that?
Is that better, Mr. Well?
Real slight. Can you pull the mic a little bit closer, maybe?
Literally, it's at my mouth, so
We didn't hear the resolution number, Mayor, that got said. Sorry about that.
is that better?
Yes.
Thank you, Jay. The one that we're asking to put after closed is 24921. And Councilman Patapoulos was just asking if 24921 can be discussed separately. And Mr. Delaney, can you please provide an update on 25121? Just a summary.
Yes. Council may recall that at our last meeting, there was the authorization to move forward with refinancing, essentially a refunding bond ordinance. This is related to that ordinance that was previously adopted, and this is determining the final form of the notes and bonds that are associated with that. This resolution and its accompanying documents were prepared by bond counsel, reviewed by the CFO, and they simply provide for the bonds have been, or in the process of being sold, and this provides the authorization for that closing to take place.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. There's no change in the amount, correct?
There's no change in
Okay.
that.
Ms. London, I have a question for you regarding the resolution for 24221. Or Mr. Delaney, whichever. On section 5 on the page 2, can that please say the mayor and council? I don't think that should just be at the discretion of the mayor.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, Mayor?
Sure, section 5, can the word "and council" be added after the word "mayor"? And then the dates that are proposed here, do we know why it's so much further down the road as far as commencing construction to 2023? And my understanding is that their site plan approval is already approved, but I actually defer that to Councilman Good and Councilwoman Davidson and Councilman Patapoulos if they want to planning board when that went through.
Well, that was a long time ago that it was voted on. I'm going to ask, I think it's probably good if we pull this one and discuss it separately. That's my thinking, because I've got some questions as well about it. Sorry. What was your name?
I had a question regarding the February 28th of 2022 date, because they're not coming back on the agenda until January to figure out when they're coming back. So they noticed, and then they have to come back January, and then they're going to get their date, which might be possibly in March.
That's for the marina. This is for the apartment complex. The apartment complex is already approved by the planning board, or the site plan. So I don't know why it's saying February 28, 2022.
The council also had approval of that, right? The planning board essentially voted whether or not it's compliant with the, no, that's different. I'm sorry, the site plan, so, forgive me.
You are hereby.
Thank you.
I mean, the date being past what it already is approved, I don't know that it really matters since it's already approved, but I didn't want to not bring that up tonight, as well as why commencement, construction looks at a start date of March 31st, 2023. My understanding is once the marina, if that is approved, then they should be able to start pulling permits to begin the construction. So I'm not sure of the timeline of the dates. Does anyone know where this came from, I guess, is my question.
No, I wasn't at the meeting.
Yes, Mayor, it is my understanding that this resolution was drafted by the Borough's Redevelopment Council and did incorporate discussions that took place between the Redevelopment Committee and the developer, as well as their attorney. During those discussions, there were general outline of the timetable moving forward, but these dates were the result of discussions between the attorneys.
Thank you. Councilman Patapoulos, did you have other questions, or do you still want to table it, or did that answer your question?
No, I didn't want to table it,
Move it, sorry. Not move it either. Move it on the agenda, not move it as a motion.
Mayor, I've always had my reservations about, and I know, I see Mr. Perlman, and this isn't an indictment of Mr. Perlman, but indeed the way the process went down, I've always had my reservations about the kind of neighbor that they were in the lead up to this. And I just want assurances either from the Mr. Perlman or the redevelopment committee that these issues were addressed that we talked about. You know, we can go from there. Now, is that something that we take? I don't think that's something we take into closed, but certainly it might be relevant. Not to put anybody on the spot, but I just would like some assurances.
And I won't speak for the redevelopment committee, but having participated in the meetings, the issues that had been previously raised by the Borough Council regarding whether the project was still viable and what the timetable was for moving forward, those questions were raised and addressed, as well as related but separate issues regarding the current status of the property, conditions, the use of the property, specifically the issues that transpired last summer regarding the jet ski. And as a result of the meeting with the redevelopment committee, the developer did proceed with the demolition of a number of those structures in the neighborhood that had also been a lingering complaint from neighbors. So to my knowledge, the issues that had been raised in terms of why the original designation had been pulled were raised in discussions and addressed, and this resolution reflects the results of those discussions.
Jay, is the storage of the marina removed from the backyard of Endeavor House?
The status of that, I don't know. Last I checked, that structure was one that had not been removed.
No, the structure itself, but there's actual storage of boats and trailers in the backyard.
We can ask them when we open it to the public.
We can ask, okay. And also, have there been any complaints regarding the demolition from any of the residents in the surrounding area, in that immediate area?
I've not been made aware of any complaints. Again, most of the complaints previously were that the vacant properties had been left in a condition, and that they had, most of the residents had expected them to be demolished and the site cleared.
Indeed. Okay.
If I can jump in, I was in that meeting as well, and I expressed some of the same concerns you had during the meeting, and we did discuss kind of a laundry list of concerns we had about how they were, treating the neighborhood, the jet ski business, the parking, the structures. There was a construction equipment that hadn't been moved. I'm trying to think of the list off the top of my head, but there was a whole litany of that stuff, and we did discuss that during the meeting.
Yeah, the land movement.
Thank you. That was like the thing,
Okay. Great, yeah. If Mr. Perlman has any questions, then absolutely.
And did you want 20921 moved further in the agenda?
Sure, we'll probably, we usually address it immediately after the vote, right, as a separate? Or are we?
You want to, right?
You
You're
can
saying
move that, yeah.
leave it within the-
Yeah, I think it would benefit, yep.
Do I have a motion to move that to the end?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any other members of the dais have any questions or commentary before we open to the public? Councilwoman McNamara?
24321, the person-to-person transfer. I don't know the order of operations. Is it a person-to-person transfer and then it becomes a place-to-place transfer? And is there ABC approval that is also happening?
Stanley, can you just explain the
I
process?
believe it did go through the state already.
So it already went through the state?
Yes, I believe in your package last month, there was a package of documents and the application and the approvals from the state included as part of your package.
Okay.
So this is just formalizing it and taking action.
Okay. And if I can ask a quick one on payment of bills, Jay, just so that I know, this is the November 17th. Cedar Street, $968. I think it says electricity. Do we know what time period that's for? And I'm asking because for recreation, we charge for use of the lights at the field, and I'm just trying to be able to break some of those numbers out.
Yes, let me just double check that. Generally, electric utility bills are for a 30-day, 1-month period. I have no reason to believe that there's anything different in that, but I would have to double check to make sure that for some reason it wasn't an estimated bill instead of an actual bill.
Okay, so I'll follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other members of the zoning board? Councilwoman Bennett?
On a payment of bills. Payment of bills, page 5, the dredging of the municipal boat ramp, it says permit, so was it dredged or was it not?
No, we are still in the permit phase. We have not received the permit, so this is related to obtaining the permits. This is not the actual
So
permit.
that's the actual process, so now we have to get a permit before we can dredge.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, continue. Page 9. Sorry. Put my glasses on. So the testing of the air packs on the bottom, is that part of the budget that was within the fire department?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to double check that. Okay. Page 16. This is just a summation of the annual professional services that we get charged for attorneys.
This is the
So,
profession,
yeah.
this bill list includes professional services during, well, generally during the 1-month period. But if you're looking specifically at tax counsel, that was for an extended period. The billing had been held for some time.
Okay. See, some of them say February 16th, 2021 through December 2nd, 2021.
Oh, okay, you're referring specifically to the item that's marked as MC 060?
Yes.
That's because this is an annual retainer. These professional services are billed on a monthly basis, but the original date of purchase order was February 16th. Because we encumber because that is an annual retainer, we encumber the full amount of the contract in February and pay down each month based on actual invoicing.
Okay. All right, page 19. The Port John's portables. So a lot of these are significantly showed, so it seems like they're around the summertime. Are we pulling the temporary bathrooms? And are we going to expect this as a regular cycle of cleaning? Because I think since they were consumed a lot, right, for like our parks and stuff, should we plan for this next year as a standard?
Yes, this, as you point out, this includes billing going back as early as into July. Again, there was just a delay in receiving the bills. This does reflect primarily peak summer usage. The extra cleanings were something that was incorporated for the summer months. That will drop back down.
Okay. And are we taking down the temporary stalls?
There's been no determination to reduce the number at this time.
Will they survive the season? Have you spoken to the vendor to see if they'll survive the season?
They are generally, last year they were used year
Okay,
round.
all right, I just wanted to
Not all
know.
of them. That's not them.
Okay.
The one at Cedar Street and some of the parks were put back out in the spring. The ones that we built the enclosures for with MPP money, but that was the first time we've ever left them out year round, which is why we built the enclosures so that they didn't blow in the wind.
Yeah, I can check with the Public Works Superintendent on what the current status is.
Right, because I also don't want us to end up having to pay a fee to replace one of these if they were damaged or something. I mean, it's usually insurance, but, okay, page 20. So SC 018, so this is a scenic view with the $4,630. That was the agreement for the landscaping that we did for this year, right? That was the general new contract that we used.
No, this is yeah,
Right.
let me go back. This is the monthly landscaping charges for the month of October, and it is broken out because some of that is charged to our Bayfront Recreation Trust, the other is charged to our regular open trust, open space and recreation trust.
Okay, that's fine. And then the next page, 21, the landscaping for $5,600. That was done on September 22nd. That was the removal of the shrubs. So we spent about $10,000, give and take, in.
Well, roughly half of that was for the regular maintenance and grass cutting. This is the extra work that was done along the waterfront in preparation for replanting in the area of the gazebo.
So does this contract include replanting, or is that separate?
It does not.
Okay. All right. Got something else that needs to be in budget, okay. And then just on page 25, US 032. Is that the payment for the water plant supervisor?
That's correct.
And that's a quarterly payment that we issue out?
That's a monthly payment for the licensed operator.
Right, okay. Okay, that's it. That's for that one.
Jay, I forgot one question. 22721 corrective action plan. Who prepared that? Did you do that, or did the CFO do that?
That was prepared in conjunction, discussions between the CFO and the tax.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of the day before we open to the public? I have a motion to open to the public for agenda items only.
Motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any members of the public who wish to speak on agenda items? Mr. Merle?
Everybody always waits for me to go first. John Merla, 34 Blood Street.
You beat Elmer this time.
I know, I see him going like this. Them short ones. Just on the communications, Mayor, the number 2, the application for the use of borough property for the friends of the library, to decorate the library. Was I seeing it right on the application? We're not charging the friends of the library, are we? To utilize the facilities because they're borough property? On the bottom of the application was a payment schedule.
That's a payment, that's always there. That fee schedule is just
Oh,
standard.
well, we're not charging them, right?
It'll say usually $100 if we charge. It'll say a certain amount on the form.
Typically says paid.
No, I don't-
Like if you
It'll
look
say
at part
paid.
1, you say
There's not a
paid.
stamp on it.
But what I'm saying is, these are volunteers that are putting up decorations. They should have to pay.
No, that's why you said if they had paid, it usually
It'll
says
say
paid. Like,
paid.
Oh,
okay.
all right, so they didn't.
No.
Oh, okay.
If you look at communication 1, it says paid $100.
Gotcha.
Spelled out.
All right, I didn't, when I seen it on the bottom, I just thought that was there because they may have paid and that was showing the schedule of payments. I'm glad they're not paying. And number 7, Kathleen, this resignation, you had said a couple meetings ago, there's actually 2 vacancies now and on the recreation. And what my point is, there are other people that have tried unsuccessfully. Their applications have been in the borough for 2 years that wanted to be on that committee. So I know there are applications already. One's mine. I put in 3 in 2 years. I never got an answer why, but I just think, we should look into people that put them in also. Because I know now it's no longer a commission, it's a committee. So basically, the commission used to recommend if they had someone to the council. Now the council appoints the
Well,
committee.
they're mayor appointments.
Yes,
Right.
so that's all I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, there's two terms that expired.
Right. And, well, she's resigning.
Well, her term was expired.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Mr. Brown?
Thank you.
Mr. Brown?
I'm number 2. Albert J. Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place. Couple of things on Resolution 238A21. Out of curiosity, why do we need a deputy borough clerk?
That was addressed at the beginning of the meeting. We actually had to change the terminology to a temporary clerk instead of deputy borough clerk. And that's in the absence of our clerk tonight, so that Jay can run the meeting on behalf.
Okay, now, now, of course, he's temporarily appointed, from what I understand, it through December 31st this year. Now, are you all going to advertise for a position as a permanent deputy borough clerk?
No one's being replaced. This was just a fill-in for tonight, and just in case we needed it, if we had to have a special meeting or something. So we just did it till the end of the month.
Oh, okay. All right. On resolution, let's see, 25121, with the obligation bonds and all that, you all explained that?
Jay, would you like to explain that again?
Certainly. This is related to the refunding bond ordinance that was recently adopted by the borough. And that refunding bond ordinance is essentially refinancing of the existing, previously authorized debt that was, had 5 years, or 5 years remaining term on its pay down. This resolution is, as it indicates, it's determining the form and other details related to that bond issue. The council previously authorized the refinancing of existing debt, and this provides for, it's the final step in that process. And it authorizes, it includes the actual documentation as to what the notes will look like, what they will say, and provides for the execution of those documents by the CFO and the mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Perlman?
Hi, Clay Perlman, 357 West Front Street. Just to answer to some of the comments, all of those houses have been demolished and the properties are cleaned. The boats are pulled back off of those properties. There haven't been any parking issues that we know of. We haven't heard about any violations or anything, and we're very conscious of these issues. And anything that comes our way, we'll take care of right away. Just want to answer to those.
And when is construction going to start?
We still have a bit of a road ahead of us with the CAFA permit. We've got another issue we've got to deal with the county. We're going to have to post bonds at some point. We have to get the plans. There's still a list of things to do, but no one on our side doesn't want this project to start tomorrow. If we could start it tomorrow, we would. We're pushing as hard as anyone. I don't think there's anyone that doesn't want to push this through, and the delays are, no one wants delays on our side. The delays are as bad for us as anybody, so.
The perception is that the delays exceeded what the expectation was.
Yeah, one of the major things that happened is we completed our capital permit, and within 2 weeks of getting the permit, DEP said, oh, now we want you to do an archaeological study. We said, we found out that they knew about that when we filed the capital permit over a year. And we said, why didn't you tell us? Well, we just didn't tell you. There's nothing we can do. We have no recourse against that. So we started the archaeological study. That took 6 months. We've now completed it. We now need to refile the capital permit. I think Jay and Ken knows that we need some things signed and some things done, and we're pushing hard for that. So that's just one of a couple of other issues. We finally got county approval. It took us 1.5 years to get county approval, roughly, but a long time, let's just say. So we're pushing hard with all the outside agencies. We've never slowed down one day in trying to get these things through.
And Mr. Perlman, in a nutshell, the archaeological study isn't to search for bones. It's to search for contamination and whatnot. correct?
No,
It
that,
isn't?
we had to do that as well.
Okay.
No, the archaeological study is to search for historic items.
Historic items?
Yes, which they found some glass from the 17 or 1800s.
Oh, wow.
I don't know a lot about it, but they found stuff. And so we had to, then they had to log that and go back and do another test. The
So
process
it is a
was
search
crazy.
for bones?
They didn't find any bugs or musket rifles or anything like that, thank God, but they did find enough stuff to keep the process going and extend it out 3 more months with a lot of extra money, et cetera, et cetera. So, but we've reached the point that the archaeological study now will not slow anything down. We can now refile the CAFA permit, and the CAFA permit is not going to, even though we're starting a new CAFA permit, it's going to pick up where we left off. So we think we'll start in 3 to 4 months is what we're being told by the review officer at CAFA.
As a side note, any chance those items ended up at the Keyport Historical Society?
Actually, I did find out something about that. We own them, but if you want them, we can give them, we're allowed to give them or do something with them. When I get the report, it's not complete yet, I can give the report to the town, and if you guys want any of that stuff, I'm happy to turn it over.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
sir.
You're welcome.
Any other members of the public? Mr. Lane?
Michael Lane, 51 First Street, Keyport. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Regarding Resolution 24221 to reinstate Mariner Village as the entity for the development of the site and the developers agreement in full force. Is the canceled financial agreement, Ordinance 29-18, adopted on 12/18/18?
Is that part of this resolution? Is that what you're asking?
Well, it is part of the resolution. We're asking why we didn't identify the ordinance in the resolution.
The resolution identifies that the funding agreement is not continuous with this resolution.
Right, and so why didn't we identify the funding agreement, which is Ordinance 29-18?
You can add that, right? It's not substantive, it is what it is. We already referenced it, right? We can add that.
Just have to confirm that that's what.
That'd be great. At the previous Keyport Borough Council meeting, I gave out a exhibit that identified what lots were involved in the Mariner Village redevelopment. And there's a number of lots that are not listed in this ordinance. And so, who is the developer of the West Front Street driveway entrance, which is going to be to the garage, which is going to go through lots 9, 11.01, and 13? If it's not this entity, if it is this entity, why aren't the lots listed? And the real question is, why isn't the reference to lot 16.01, which was the lot approved by the Keyport Unified Planning Board? And why hasn't that lot 1601, after 2 or 3 years, still not filed with the county? Why are we talking about all these individual lots when the planning board approved lot 16.01?
So either Councilman Good, Councilman Pacheco, or Ms. London, is that supposed to be inclusive and supposed to be 6 and then 16.01 is that in?
And this resolution is specific as to just the ones that are listed. I'm not familiar with 16.01.
That's the consolidated lot.
That's the consolidated lot.
The county hasn't, they haven't filed the county plan.
And the applicant hasn't filed with the county.
Filed with the county.
Not according to the report, the last report that was shared by Mr. Palpas.
No, he said he filed with the county, they're holding it up. That's what triggers
All right,
the
so-
consolidation.
So we haven't even got and there's also, in our ordinances, there's time limits on the amount of time before the plan becomes invalid because you didn't get it filed. So, again, the ordinance that you got tonight doesn't list all the lots that are to be part of lot 16.01. And it doesn't reference lot 16.01. In addition, there's a condition of approval in the ordinance for lot 16.01 that says the applicant has to go back and get Browns Point Marina approved by the planning board. And you can't issue any permits until that action is completed.
That we're aware of, that's why we redesignated the lot, I believe it was 9, so, back in August, so that they can move forward with the application for, moving forward with the marina approval.
All right, but you need more than some part of lot 9. You need parts of the other lots, because the plan very clearly delineates the fact that the entrance to the garage is going to be from West Front Street. And, you know, your documentation you've got so far doesn't reflect that.
Mayor, Mr. Lang, it's also worth noting that there are a number of conditions that the planning board approval is subject to. Not the least of which is part of this development includes the vacation of a public right-of-way as well as ultimately a re-subdivision of the lot. So in some sense, this is a chicken or egg situation, which comes first. When all of the dust settles, what is being done here specifically with this resolution is simply reinstating the redevelopment agreement between the borough and the designated developer. All of the other items that you have referenced, and I'm not disputing the accuracy of what you're saying regarding lot 16.01, that may very well be the case, but this is not the final step in the process, and there are a number of other aspects. Again, the borough has not vacated the right-of-way yet, and that is part of the re-subdivision of the lots when this process is completed.
I may have an incorrect impression. My impression is the borough has vacated the end of Washington Street, and that's been listed in some of the applicants' data, that the borough has vacated that.
I don't believe that's the case. I believe there is part of the redevelopment agreement provides that the borough will, but at what point that happens, it certainly would make sense for the borough to vacate a public right-of-way until the very last minute when all of the other ducks are in order. At least that's my opinion.
I will send out email this week, because I'm very sure that the borough has vacated the end of Washington Street. Now, has the applicant paid the application fee to Bayshore Regional Sewage Authority of $194,000? Last time it was reported status, it hadn't been paid. I also mentioned the applicant was scheduled to be before the planning board last week, December 2nd, to get an extension of his approvals for another year and to answer all the questions about the open issues, which didn't occur. The ball was dropped. There was no planning board session on December 2nd for Mariner Village. I think you're jumping the gun here.
Okay, I would like to go on record for that though, please, because that was not the developer's fault, and that's on record, and you were at the meeting when it was discussed, that it was the newspaper's error, and they were supposed to be heard, but it was not publicly noticed correctly, so it's not that we're avoiding it, but we can also go back to the fact that this resolution is happening tonight because of miscommunication amongst this current dais that took place in July. So there's a lot of different points that are being missed in this conversation.
The applicant was not able to present his case at the planning board meeting on December 2nd.
That's correct, because we couldn't let him,
And
because it was improper notice by the
due to
newspaper, not
improper
by them.
notice.
By the newspaper, not by them.
The last time the applicant, when was the last time the applicant was before the planning board?
They were
May May.
But the reason they weren't before the planning board in August was our error.
No, because you passed a resolution and then in addition, there were other problems. But this is just a reflection of this project. In addition, if you go to the county website, as of last week, this applicant, Marinerville, the entity, still hasn't been listed as the owner of the lots 1, 2, and 3. All the other lots that are listed here, they're not under the ownership of the entity. They're not. And I don't understand. It's been 3 years, and the ownership hasn't been transferred? Okay, so, as I said, the lot 16.01 hasn't been filed with the county officially, and in addition, the ownership of all the properties make up lot 16.01 is not the entity. The entity only owns lots 1, 2, and 3. Lots 6, 6.01, 5, etc. are not owned by this entity.
Mr. Delaney, it's not a requirement that the developmental entity own all of the lots to be designated as a redevelopment. That's what he's going to ask.
I'm talking about the efficiency and effectiveness of this developer. And he was originally supposed to have completed construction this December, this year.
Oh, I know.
This year.
No one's denying.
And so you're saying, oh, it's okay, we'll just let all this go on. Now, so why hasn't he transferred the ownership? Why? I would think these are questions the council should be asking. Exhibit A in the 3/22/19 redevelopment agreement was never, last time it was up, was still unsigned by the mayor and the clerk. Has that changed? Has that exhibit been signed off on? Per development agreement, exhibit D, monthly status reports. Have you gotten monthly status reports in the last 3 or 4 months?
We haven't gotten them the last 3 or 4 years.
So why is this before us tonight? Where's the fix? Where's the fix? What's the latest acceptable plan? Has there been any discussion about the historic contaminated fill, the huge pile that's the end of Washington Street? What's the answer? We know it can't be, at least on the work that was done by the Environmental Commission, the issue of, we're going to quote, move that over to lots underneath the new Mariner Village entity. That can't take place because that area hasn't been tested and validated. It's more contaminated than the contamination. So, what's this council, what's the answers?
Mike, I think that Mr. Link, well, I'll wait.
What's the answer on when that's, and then the, and I don't know what the status is, but the applicant failed to get an extension of the approvals, and this year. And so I don't know what the legal implications of that are. So I really would think that this council would want to get some of these answers from your redevelopment council in front of the council before you proceed. I was going to make a comment, but I won't. Regarding resolution 209, borough ownership of the mosaics benches. At the previous council meeting, there were issues of, are we going to be able to maintain them? Are we going to be able to insure them? And are they going to be sculptures not to be used as benches? Has that been resolved, and how was it resolved?
We are going to discuss that tonight.
Pardon?
We're going to discuss that tonight.
Before the resolution?
We pulled that resolution.
Oh, okay.
But
Will
if you
there be
have
an
commentary,
opportunity for comment?
no, so now would be the time.
You pull the resolution, but you're not
We're
going to...
not pulling it, we moved it further down on the agenda, so this would be the public portion for the entire agenda, so it's on the agenda for this evening.
All right, so I ask the questions. Who's going to do the maintenance? And the insurance issues? And are they going to treat these things as sculptures or benches? What are the arrangements going to be? I look forward to hearing that. Regarding letter 3, the freedom from religious foundation. That poster, can you give some insight as to the size of the poster and where is it going to be located? Is it going to be located up next to the Christmas tree? Is it going to be located down to the bottom of the hill? What's the size of the poster? Is it 10 by 10, 3 by 3? And I'd like to hear some discussion on that. Unfinished business. The flood damage prevention ordinance. In 2007, the master plan identified multiple actions needed to protect properties in the borough. And some of these actions were, and I hope you'll take this into account as you discuss the flood damage prevention, was the anchoring of all structures in the coastal high hazard area. The 2017 Master Plan Community Resilience Objectives, items 3 and goals 3 and goals 4, all call for the anchoring of both structures. And if you go back and look at the Strategic Recovery Planning Report, you'll see the amount of damage that was done by unanchored structures. Unanchored structures are boats, parts of piers, cars, and hot tubs, for example. Another requirement was, in the master plan, elevation of the parking lot surfaces to 7 feet relative to datum 88. Again, the 27 master plan community resilience objective item 8 calls for that. The elevation of both of the fuel tanks above BFE plus 3. That's called for in the 2017 master plan for the community resilience element goals 3 item. And also account for severe sea level rise in the design of all structures having a useful life through 2050. Again, this was a master plan conditional requirement, goal 3. Now, I mentioned the Strategic Recovery Planning Report. That report that we did back in, I think it was by 2014, 2013, triggered some funding for the borough for planning purposes. But now, the federal government is getting ready to provide a lot of money for dealing with climate impact. And I would think that our Strategic Recovery Planning Report would be a foundation to go in and ask for support, financial support for the borough, because it talks about things like bulkheading. It talks, specifically mentions the bulkheading at Fireman's Park. It talks about elevating bridges. The bridge over Tingaroa Creek on Green Grove is an example. It talks about stormwater management. It talks about stormwater outfall pipes. These are all things we're wrestling with. We haven't got in really good shape. The bridge over Moffett, on Maple Place, the Moffett Street Bridge. Seems to me we should grab a hold of the Strategic Recovery Planning Report and use it to go after funding. I can't imagine that Union Beach is not going to be going after all their money for raising the dike around the town to 15 feet. So you have the opportunity to build on the Strategic Recovery Planning Report and to get in line with New York City. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Cronin, it's not a requirement because this is not a public hearing, but if you want to comment again?
Sure. Do I need to say who I am anymore?
No. You need to identify yourself. You don't need to say your address.
Just to, note this respect to Mr. Lane, but most of what he said is just wrong. The facts are not there. And he's saying things like, well, why hasn't the property been transferred, as if it's a problem? 357 West Front Street owns some property, and Mariners Village LLC owns some properties. Both entities consent to everything. Transferring property is more of a business decision at X point in the process. It doesn't slow the process down, it doesn't affect it. Regarding the contaminated fill, we're in an arrangement with the government, with the LSRP cleanup. We're at the end of the rope with it. The fill can be used in the apartment project as fill, as long as it's capped. It's not an issue, it's not slowing the project down, we're on top of it, we know about it. I can't remember everything he said, but I could answer to every one of them if you would like me to. As far as the reports go, I'm not sure, I could be wrong, but if the reports, I thought the reports come during construction. I don't know if it was during the development process, but I do know there are reports called for in that, and that's something we need to fix immediately, which we will. I'm glad that was brought up. But I could answer to all of them if he wants to bring them up, or he wants to give me a list of everything he just said. I'm happy to provide answers to everybody on all of those items. But those are just two examples of something.
Thank you. Any members of the governing body have any questions for Mr. Cronin? Clarifying. Thank you, Mr. Cronin. Sure. Any other members of the public? Mr. Stroud?
Jack Straub, 235 Main Street. On communication number 3, that can be discussed now, correct?
Yeah.
That was not separated out. I'm just curious whether there's any discussion among the council members. It's actually listed in here in the application as a Bill of Rights nativity. So at what point does the borough decide what types of things will be included in the holiday displays? If someone wants to put a real nativity up with, Jesus and the Magi and everything else, will that be allowed? If someone wants to put a Festivus pole up, will that be allowed? I mean,
How tall is the Festivus?
Well, the Festivus pole wouldn't mind, but I'm just curious as to how the council feels about, opening this door to anyone putting. I mean, this is a little bit of a mockery when they call it the Bill of Rights nativity. I understand there are free speech issues, but where does this go in the future in terms of whatever else anyone wants to put out in the holiday display?
Mr. Straub, you asked in the beginning if there was going to be any questions on it, and I did miss 2 of my questions when I asked earlier, so I'll ask them now while you're up here if you don't mind.
Sure.
I
don't have anything else to say, so you can just discuss it.
Oh. On that application, to me, I feel it's incomplete because it doesn't list the applicant's full address. So their hometown isn't even listed on here, so my understanding is that it's not someone from the borough of Keyport, and I have not had this request come forward from anyone from the borough of Keyport, of our constituents. And the other thing is, noting back to Mr. Merle's comment before, there isn't anything noted on here for the payment, and if they want it there for 30 days, I would apply the same as we're charging $100 for someone to use the gazebo. That would be $100 a day for 30 days. So has that payment been made?
Yeah, I don't believe any payment's been made, ma'am.
I mean, I know in the beginning when they were first inquiring. It was indicated that it was extremely heavy and being transported in from, I believe, Wisconsin, and now all of a sudden it's less than 10 pounds and it's, cardboard. So, I don't know if we want to discuss that further, but in the meantime, I just want to let Mr. Straub know I did miss my questions on that earlier. Do any other members of the public have questions before we close to the public? Have a motion to close to the public?
Motion.
All in favor? I'll run through the mayor's report. I attended the November KBBC meeting, attended the New Jersey State Veterans Day ceremony with several members of the council as well as committee members, and the borough received the We Value Our Veterans Award. Held a mayor's wellness campaign meeting via Zoom, attended the New Jersey League of Municipalities conference, and also served on a nominations committee for the New Jersey League of Municipalities. Attended the November Green Team meeting, attended the holiday tree lighting, attended the New Jersey Reentry Corporation atrium dedication to Senate President Sweeney on behalf of the Reentry Mayor's Task Force, participated in the bi-monthly collaboration meeting with the Board of Ed and Mr. Delaney, held the second annual Keyport Resource Panel via Zoom with attendees including a broad representation from state, county, and local, anywhere from Governor McGreevy, the VNA of Keyport, clergy members from several houses of worship in Keyport, the food pantry directors of the local food pantries, library director, senior center director, school superintendent, OEM coordinator, and Keyport Police Department. Participated in the New Jersey League Municipalities Library Law webinar, and attended the planning board meeting last week for the portions that I was able to. Some of it we had to recuse ourselves. Now we will move on to the consent agenda. A reminder that 209 is being pulled for consideration afterwards, after further discussion. And 249 was pulled already and voted on to move until after closed session. If there is a motion to move any of these forward, my request is still such, with Ms. Litton's approval, that resolution 24221 be inclusive of the words "and council" after the word mayor on section 5. That's fine. If there's a pleasure of the council to make that motion. Unless there's further discussion, I apologize.
We're just approving the agenda right now, right? We're not doing communications.
We're not doing communications.
Okay, all right.
Unless is there further discussion, I apologize.
Motion
Second.
with the requested changes.
Second.
Jay, can I please have a roll call?
Certainly. Council President Good?
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco?
Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos?
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott?
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara?
Yes.
Next, we have discussion for 20921. Councilman Fotopoulos, to discuss on.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve 20921, and then we can discuss after if it's seconded.
Second.
With the motion on the table, I did communicate with Ask as requested. They've expressed a willingness to do repair to the benches if needed, and when asked by the borough administrator or approved by the borough council, they can't be under any obligation to do so given the nature of the organization, so they're not looking to be baked into this resolution. They have liability insurance, which was pointed out in the email that the mayor sent to all of us. But as far as any other insurance, that's probably not what we're looking for there, as far as insuring the sculptures themselves. Volunteering their time to do the repair if needed is a possibility if a volunteer performs the work. volunteers did craft it after all. And as far as Mr. Lane's comments or questions on that, the sculptures are on borough property, so they get insured by the borough. That's almost that's just a reality. Whether or not anybody else insures it, it is insured under the borough JIF. And also, as far as damage to it is concerned, I don't want to minimize any damage to any piece of borough property at all, okay? But I will say that the sculptures still retain their beauty, and we can ask to have it repaired at will. And given that there's no precedent for not accepting a gift of public art from an artist or a society to a municipality, especially when it's on borough property. And also, given that the guidelines that we're looking to establish right now and impose upon this particular sculpture, notwithstanding anything else in the borough, my recommendation and my hope is that we will pass this tonight, and any kind of restrictions that need to, or the council desires to put on anything like this in the future, the council will establish that, Freudian slip, the council will establish that moving forward. This way, artists, artisans, and others will have a clear understanding what the expectation is going to be if they want to do a demonstration of public art, permanent public art such as this. There is temporary public art that can also be discussed. There are temporary installations of porta potties and fencing and other things that we have around town that we can over-regulate this as much as we want, but given the nature of the work, given the expectations that were established back when the work was first proposed and approved after a very expensive piece of art was destroyed by Sandy, I'm going to implore, beg, if you will, that we go ahead and approve this now and leave it for future discussion how we disseminate and accept public art in the future with very specific steps and guidelines and protocols. Thank you.
I believe, as you mentioned, there was an email sent to the governing body last night after homework was done because we hadn't received any. But it turns out that in June of 2013, you're asking about expectations to be set moving forward. The expectations were laid out in the letter from the Art Society to the borough, indicating that they would maintain and make the repairs of said benches once they were built within a 3-month time frame. Obviously, it didn't take 3 months, it took about 6 years. So the business administrator and the attorney, excuse me?
Sorry. Go ahead.
So the reason I point that out is because the business administrator and the attorney that were with the borough at the time were not here when the benches were completed. So going back through all the records, there was a presentation made by the Art Society twice to the governing body. There was never an approval, quote unquote. And in the presentation, it was stated in their letter that they would maintain and repair the structures. So the resolution that's being presented tonight takes that away from them and puts it on us. And if they had liability insurance this entire time, they could have filed for the repairs to be made. So I just want to make that commentary.
Can I respond? Of course. Liability insurance doesn't cover damage, so that their insurance wouldn't cover the repair. The liability is for injury. that occurs on borough property, and that's typically what the requirement is. As far as the maintenance is concerned, the maintenance and who does it isn't in question.
Well, it is in question.
No, let me finish. It isn't in question it's the responsibility of who has responsibility over getting that done. The Art Society has expressed, and members of the Art Society have expressed, that they're willing to do that, but they're not willing to have their name baked into the resolution, and it doesn't make sense because I hope the Art Society stays around for years and years to come. But they are indeed an unpaid volunteer organization that has no obligation whatsoever to the borough or to maintain the sculptures. I think that if we approve this resolution tonight and we start by taking a proactive, interactive role with the Art Society and we say, will you please do the repairs, find somebody to do the repairs, and if there's any cost related to it, let the borough know, and then of course the governing body will approve the cost to repair it. But putting them on the hook to get damage insurance and also putting them on the hook to be continuously responsible for the maintenance and repair of these sculptures is just a bridge too far when it comes to imposing that upon the organization. I get that you want to do, I get that there are some members that might want to do that, and it's not that I'm entirely opposed to that. To me, I need to understand the specifics, but let's move forward with this, and then if there is a desire by council to have these guidelines and protocols moving forward, let it be. Let it be. You know, that's majority rules. So.
London wants to speak.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that the donation agreement that's attached to the resolution says very specifically that the borough agrees to assume full responsibility for maintenance and repairs of the sculptures.
Indeed.
So therefore, going forward in the future, I mean, based on this agreement, the borough would be responsible. So you would have to modify the agreement if there's a desire to have them do something.
No.
But the way this is written, that's what would have to happen.
May I ask you this?
Yes.
If the borough is responsible, okay, does it preclude the borough or does it prevent the borough from asking artisans to repair it?
Yes, the way this is written, it says that the borough accepts full responsibility.
So what would be the recommendation, not using ask as the art, or, you know, would we say something like the borough takes full responsibility and will employ artisans to repair when deemed necessary and approved by council, so on and so forth?
Well, if the borough is assuming full responsibility, however you decide to use that responsibility is up to the borough then. So if you want to use certain volunteers or use certain contractors, that would be up to the borough.
That's what I was asking.
So you don't have to say that specifically here.
Right.
But I just wanted to make it clear that the way this is written now, the borough is assuming full responsibility. So ask could just say, the agreement says you have it. You don't come to us.
Yeah, and that's
The agreement
exactly
says
right.
that.
That's exactly right, because ask may not have the artisans or the volunteers or the man and woman power to be able to do it. So that's the whole point that I'm trying to make, is that borough doesn't have dominion over ask and shouldn't have dominion over ask under these circumstances. So if my question is, if ask is available and capable of doing it, under the current language of this resolution, can the borough ask them if they would do it?
I would say that you would need to, and recommend that you would have some sort of agreement then, if you're going to go to them, just like any contractor that you would use. You want to make sure that whoever is doing the work is insured and can do the work.
100%. And at the time of repair, would that not be done at the time of repair rather than baking it into the resolution? Wouldn't the agreement be created This is not a maintenance agreement between the borough and Ask. This is the borough accepting the gift of,
And the responsibility.
and responsibility of it.
Right.
Say the council approves it tonight, and then say at next meeting, we determine that it needs to be repaired, at which time we would, hopefully from now until then, it's not gonna happen like that, it never happens that quick, but now until then, we would say, Ask, members of Ask, are you willing and can you repair the mosaics on these bench sculptures? And if the answer is yes, at that time, an agreement would be drawn up, and they would have to present insurance, which they have, and then they would, the guidelines and the RFP, the quote or whatever would be there. I mean, it's two different things in my mind. Am I wrong about that?
Well, now you're getting into, it's getting more complicated because depending on the cost that's involved, you may have to go out to bid for it. You can't just pick someone because it's now your property, and public property, if you were having work done on it, has to be publicly bid if it goes over the bid limit.
Absolutely, which is what, $17,500?
Well, you have a QPA, I believe, so
Yes.
it would be 44.
So it's 44,000. So
44,000.
I would say, it's not that complicated. If it needs $45,000, that's my opinion. If it needs $44,000 worth of work, then certainly we would have to go out to bid. But if it doesn't, there's nothing. Is there anything that precludes us from?
But you also have to get quotes.
We would have to get quotes.
To get the best.
And if
So
Ask
it's
does it,
it's getting complicated.
Ask does it for free?
I'm sorry?
If Ask does it for free?
They could do it now for free for the
Sure.
last 6 years with all the damages.
Oh,
on it.
you know what? I'd rather we didn't do that. Because they are a good organization.
Can I ask a question? Why are we recreating the wheel? We've already done this with art on borough property. We have art at the library that we accepted as a gift. I can look up the ordinance again. I know, or the resolution. I know I said it in October. We have done this before. I think I'm just lost as to why we're debating this. What happens if the art at the library, the butterfly, gets damaged? What happens then? Who's responsible for that?
That can definitely be put somewhere and stored away. This is something that's going to cost the borough a lot of money to sit and destroy and move. I mean, it's a permanent structure.
How is it going
It's
to
a
cost
different
the
thing.
borough money to
The other side
destroy?
too is just for some additional feedback. We also have mosaic garbage cans of art, garbage art that are also in disarray. That that Ask created as well. And somehow or another it was accepted. I don't know where the contract is for that, where's the agreement for that, but there's a lot of, the amount of work that's going to be done to maintain this. I'd rather have an agreement on an annual basis. They go and then it's an agreement on an annual basis, this organization does this, I mean, there's nothing here, it's really making us take full ownership for such a it's a visual piece of art in the middle of a major piece of area. And I know the individuals who worked on this. They worked extremely hard to prepare this.
I think we all do.
So out of respect, I mean, this is.
I agree with you. I think a yearly contract is reasonable.
But it should be in the resolution that commitment.
That I don't agree with.
I agree with, I think anything regarding this should be in the resolution, outlined and detailed, how we want to move forward with this particular piece of art. And then going forward, if we want to put something together about future acceptance of art and how it's going to work and who maintains it and the time frame and so on and so forth, then that can be put in place and tacked onto this. But this is one particular piece that I think needs to be clearly defined with everything, whether it's going to be too wordy or not too wordy. Who does the maintenance? What are the options 1, 2, and 3 for maintenance? What's insurance? What happens? I just think it's too vague for this, and to agree for this now and then come back at a future date in another few months to put more details in to outline exactly what it should be. Let's just do it now for this, get this sorted out, and then in the future, we can gladly put something together that encompasses what we want to do when we have art in the borough.
So specifically, what is the desire to put bake Ask into the ordinance? I mean, I don't know if I agree with it or not. I need to know what specifically we're asking. asking.
I think one of the concerns, Councilman Papadopoulos, to reiterate is that right now it's still under the ownership of the Art Society, right? Which there's not a person in this room that doesn't appreciate the Art Society. In fact, most of us have all been a member of the Art Society at some point. So the problem comes with the fact that, you know, is this going to be something else that people take pictures of if there's a damaged area and puts it all over social media and blames our DPW department for not repairing it, right?
I don't think that any of that's been done, though.
I'm speaking, right? Because that has been done about the garbage cans, that our DPW doesn't, you know, treat them with respect, and that's why the tiles are falling off, and when are we gonna replace the tiles on the garbage can? So no, these conversation dialects have happened. So by taking ownership on it, I'm just expressing another area of concern on if we don't identify, considering when this was presented, again, never approved, but presented and built, then it was presented that they would maintain it. So I just don't know where that dialogue from them has changed. So I
Let's
just
put the-
re-emphasizing that, but Councilmember McNamara has a question.
I'd like to add my 2 cents. So, again, the original documents do say that Ask would maintain it, and we've all sat here for years, and we've heard numerous people upset, myself being one, about the damage that has occurred, right? Should there be cameras? What's happening? And I know recently I went by, and there was a huge chunk out of one of them, and it absolutely broke my heart. So it, you know, repairs there do need to be addressed, but to me, we're not putting anybody on the hook, but if we are accepting a donation, and if somehow in that acceptance, we are saying going forward, we are going to maintain it, we should not be accepting it already damaged in need of repair. That's my feeling. If it can be repaired, and we have a baseline to start with, and then we have an agreement. But I think that, you know, we're being put on the hook to do all of the repairs, and nobody wants it the way it is. I mean, we're all distraught of what has happened, and there's a lot that needs to be done. But I think there's still a little bit more that needs to be worked out in terms of it. I would like to see it repaired before we even accept the donation.
This horse left the barn years ago. We have big sculptures sitting on public property, it's borough property. How it got there exactly, if the council, mayor, as you sent, said, yes, please, Art Society, build these mosaic structures.
No, they didn't.
There was a president, they said, go ahead, you saw things, that go ahead. They're there, they haven't moved. If, I don't know why this horse left the barn years ago. If we're gonna go forward, the council wants to go forward and put restrictions on art donations, and here's what's gonna happen if you wanna put art on, fine. But this one, you have big structures that have been there for years. So the fact that they're now not owned by the borough, yet on borough property, and we're concerned with liability, that it's too much of a gray area. It's either accept them, have the Art Society, if they're willing, to put back the mosaics, or somehow pick them up and shove them out of town. That would be my option. But I don't think anybody's picking them up and moving them out of town. So again, why don't you deal with future donations of art? It's a lesson learned, but still, we now have structures that have been there for years sitting on borough property, which should be owned by the borough. We can argue back and forth how exactly they got there, but I will say that I almost guarantee, I might not have been in town, but nobody snuck on there in the middle of the night and built these things. So it's either through inaction by the borough, or the borough said implied consent. It's there, they've been there for years. The ownership now should not be a gray area, because we're going to be responsible for it, because the land is responsible, we're owning it. So I think that it's too late to argue about they should really own it now, but adopt it. You want to argue about a maintenance plan, do it later, but as of now, we should just accept the donation, ask the Art Society if they want to put the tiles back on, the mosaics, probably not saying the right term, but they might be happy to do so, but, now's not the time to sit here and wonder about the ownership of the structures.
Councilman Calabro.
Thank you. I just, in fairness, we have been talking about this a little while, and the condition of repairing it before we do this is being introduced tonight. I'm not entirely opposed to something like that, but I don't see the benefit of, when we're not talking about the artists themselves, we are, wait. We're talking about a volunteer organization in town that has expressed an interest to repair these sculptures. So whether who repairs them and whether or not they get repaired, is there going to be a cost for the borough for them to be repaired? Possibly, but they're a volunteer organization. They can also do a fundraiser to repair the sculptures, and I'd be happy to help with that. But there's not, I think that there are valid points being made throughout, but when it comes to this particular piece or pieces, all right, Councilman Good put it astutely, the horse has left the barn, right? And I'm glad that they're there. I wouldn't say I'm distraught about the damage, but I'm distressed. But what's nice about this is that it can be repaired, and there is a willingness to do so. But to me, the acceptance of this and any request for repair or contract that is engaged in the near future are two separate things. And I know we don't agree on that, but to me, we can do this now and then move on and finally get them repaired and not have any issue moving forward. And it can be done in cooperation and in conjunction with the Art Society of Keyport, a volunteer organization, which is not necessarily that. Okay.
I just have one question for Ms. Lundman or Jay. Regarding our insurance, what does the artwork fall under, and what's the fee for us covering our pieces of art like this?
I'll answer the insurance part of the question. I don't know specifically. As it's been noted, it is already part of the borough's property. One of the advantages of our JIF membership is that there are scheduled equipment and improvements that are listed. There's also a general understanding that some things might not be listed. It's a question that I don't have a specific answer to, other than to say that it is not unlike on the same piece of property, there's a structure and there's a gazebo, there's also playground equipment. Typically, in the insurance schedule, we identify parks. And there's an understanding. It doesn't necessarily indicate, oh, there's a swing set and a Model X jungle gym. It's covered, both in terms of liability as well as for any property damage that it might be subject to. There is also a very specific segment of our insurance listings that identify other items, usually things like works of art. I'm trying to think what is specifically listed on ours, because they don't fit into the category of being playground equipment, whatever. So the answer is the JIF will cover them. The question will always be, well, what's the value of them? And in this case, it's hard because it's not like the borough or anyone actually paid to have it constructed in place. So the value may be based on the effort and material and manpower necessary to reconstruct it. There's also some intrinsic value because it is a sculpture. But at the very least, the insurance will cover it. What that cost would be, for the most part, our insurance is generated, or the insurance assessment, because we are part of the JIF, we're essentially self-insured for the underlying coverage. I don't know that you could really quantify that. If we were to list it as a scheduled item, someone would come down, take a look at it and say it's worth $5,000, it's worth $50,000, and our insurance would be based on the potential damage that it could incur, given its location and whatever else. I know it's a long-winded answer, but I think that gives you some sense of how I believe that JIF would view the insurability of this item.
If I may, we had this conversation in 2017 when we had the discussion about putting other pieces of art under our insurance under our borough property, and my recollection was that there was no extra fee involved with it. It was just part of the coverage that we get from the JIF. Again, we've done this before.
We haven't accepted damaged art before, I'm sorry.
I guess my concern is once you accept a donation, it brings with it an obligation to the borough to maintain and repair it, I believe. So I don't think you can separate the two issues. When you own something, when someone sues, if they are injured by it, they're going to sue you too, because it's understood that you should have been repairing it if you own it. And you own it when you accept a donation. So I think you have to make clear, once you accept a donation, who's going to be responsible for it, for the repair and maintenance.
Leslie, wouldn't that question about you're being damaged because it was not upkept be a little off point, considering that the damage that they're talking about is missing mosaic tiles? I mean, so essentially the lawsuit would be, I was playing on the structures and I cut myself because of the missing tiles.
Right, and you should have, I would argue, you should have repaired it so I would not have injured myself.
And again, I think that what we're spinning around here. So I still am of the opinion, it's on borough property. It's been on borough property. If it was going to happen, it's ours. That doesn't matter when somebody was going to get cut right now, they wouldn't say, oh, well, okay, borough, well, you didn't accept it, let's go sue.
Exactly, they're still going to come after the borough.
It doesn't make a big difference.
I just have one more question. Regarding the location, is that still considered part of the bid, like the bid? Yeah, is that still part of the, can we still use the boat ramp, those fees that we use for waterfront? Is that part of the maintenance? Is that, does that extend that far out?
Just talking about Arbit?
Yeah,
Brit?
yeah, the brick. The brick, that's what it's called, brick. Is that area part of the brick or not?
It's my opinion that the maintenance of any of our waterfront recreation facilities, active recreation and passive recreation, would be eligible for payment from the Bayfront Recreation Trust. And that would include the maintenance of the sculpture.
And that includes theater, all our waterfront parks, that far out.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
So we've got a roll call, please.
Council President Good?
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco?
Yes.
Councilman Fotopoulos?
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott?
No.
Councilmember Davidson?
No.
Councilmember McNamara?
No.
There appears to be 3 yeses, 3 nos, tie vote.
No.
Next, we have an introduction of ordinances. Ordinance number 1, Deputy Recycling Coordinator. Jay, would you like to read that by title?
Ordinance of the Borough of Keyport, County of Monmouth, New Jersey, amending Chapter 16 of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Keyport, entitled Streets, Sidewalks, and Sanitation, at section 16-6, mandatory separation of recyclable materials for collection and recycling.
Have a motion to introduce?
Motion,
Second.
can we have discussion? The recommendation of the recycling committee was to, because we're essentially losing a position by eliminating the deputy coordinator's position, to increase the appointed members of the public from, I'm going to say from, it's either 5 to 6 or 6 to 7, I can't remember. It's not 6 to 7. I think that was the total members.
Oh, you're saying that's the document strikes, correct?
No, it is, Councilwoman, but Jay, do you know what I'm talking about? Because you were the one that drew this up, right?
Yes, page 2 of the proposed ordinance references the recycling committee, and the recycling committee consists of 6, presently, the recycling committee consists of 6 members. In the event that the public works liaison is either the recycling coordinator or the deputy coordinator. But otherwise, the committee consists of 7 members.
Okay, can we keep that? Because the new ordinance reduces it by 1. Does anybody have any objection to?
The new ordinance doesn't reduce any.
What was that?
The new ordinance doesn't reduce any.
It reduces the member because we're eliminating the deputy position there.
I see.
So the members of the public, and the intent is to, without pulling out names, if we're, is to, the current deputy coordinator has expressed a willingness and a desire to volunteer. And if all things being equal and the committee remains the same, that's not for me to decide for sure, but it would make sense in my mind to increase that number. All we're doing is we're taking the position of deputy and putting into a member of the public.
So you're saying it's the 4 resident citizen members instead of 3?
Correct.
And this is an advisory committee, and then all meetings are open to the public, right? So my fear moving forward is while the members of the committee are dedicated now, recycling committees were established to bring awareness to recycling back when people weren't doing it as readily as the recycling committee has brought our borough to be in lines with. So if one of the members wanted to step down in the future, that does leave a lot for future governing bodies to have to fill as far as volunteers. And as you know, volunteers in the community sometimes are hard to come by. So while we're fortunate to have a dedicated team now, I don't know if I want to increase having to put someone on for the future, whereas the person that's interested can attend as a member of the public.
I would put to the governing body that we're actually decreasing and eliminating someone from a position from the committee. This is, once again, I don't know why it just makes total sense to me to do it, especially given the members that have been on the committee for years. I mean, there's only one member on that committee that hasn't been on it for any number of years. What would be, of course, they can attend the meeting themselves. Anybody can attend. I plan on attending, but as an unappointed member. But I think we should keep it the same number just to make the appointment. And if we find, like we do with the green team, that the appointments aren't being filled, it's not like in times of need the recycling committee can't use the members. And the recycling committee, as you expressed, has done a lot of work over the years. I would also contend, I don't know if you're aware, but, there's a lot of recycling bottleneck and policy that's being reestablished in the borough, in the state, that the borough is going to need to address. And, a committee can and has, especially ours, addressed it much more efficiently than any one deputy, any one coordinator for sure. So that being said, given the experience of all of the members that are on the committee right now, I would hope that it would be, I think it makes sense just to keep it the same number on the committee, but increase the member of the public, and make room for the position that's being eliminated as the deputy coordinator.
I don't understand the basis. Why are we doing this?
Eliminating the deputy coordinator?
Yeah. Why are we changing the order?
For several reasons. Councilman Good, you've been in some of the email dialogue since 2019. Recycling grant and tonnage grants for recycling used to be profitable for the municipalities. We used to bring anywhere up from $10,000 on upwards for grant money. Currently, we're bringing in about $3,500. So to have two positions, paid positions,
Bless you.
that's something that's been cleaned up for 3 years now.
Well, no, I mean, more along the lines of, if we don't want to put somebody in the position, just don't appoint somebody in the position.
No, it's not how it's written.
It just says that the
shall.
positions are created,
Right.
they shall be appointed. We have a lot of committees that there shall be appointed members of which we don't fill.
But then we get pressure from the public when we don't have them filled.
Well,
So that's the other side of it. And we don't have slots to fill them, volunteers.
I also,
then change it to an unpaid position. But, I just don't understand why we're making this change. Just don't appoint anybody.
and I don't know if I understand why we're eliminating the deputy and a member of the committee.
The deputy is the member of the committee,
Right.
as Councilman Tatopoulos is saying. We're not,
And we actually have I'm sorry, Mayor, Councilwoman McDermott, we actually have the volunteers for this organization, and we're shooing one away.
You're misinterpreting what I'm saying.
I'm sorry if I could. Go ahead.
What I'm saying is, just as the mayor put out, had shared, there are concerns with, as honoring the individuals who are volunteering now and want to continue with the engagement,
Wonderful.
right? But what happens if there is a disengagement and they don't want to volunteer? Then we have to go and try and find 4 people and fill these seats.
Once again, it's a problem that we don't have at present, so why anticipate a problem when there is none?
And the coordinator, the deputy coordinator seems to be not so much it would be technically an employee or a grant. But, so if you don't fill it, it's not like you're leaving a volunteer space available. So that's my, I don't see the need to amend it rather than just not appoint somebody to the position.
The only problem I would have with that, Councilman Good, personally, is that now it's doing the same thing. It's eliminating well, obviously the person's not a volunteer because they're getting paid $3,200 and change every year. But in eliminating that $3,200 position, we still have we do have volunteers that are willing to work on this committee. Being a member, again, if you want to keep saying that's fine, we'll vote on it next month. But if there's especially under the circumstances when there's a volunteer, I would hope the council would not only recognize but honor the fact that there are volunteers for this particular committee, and simply eliminate the position of deputy and increase the position of the member of the public from 3 to 4. And I think that's. Thank you, Mayor, for the discussion.
I guess my point of confusion is, didn't you work on this? Did you put this together?
I did.
So, why is that coming up now and not what was presented to us?
Jay?
Perhaps it was a misunderstanding on my part.
If there's an email that has my recommendation of increasing one member of the public.
So, governing body, do you want to cancel out this vote and re-motion to introduce with a fourth resident member?
Is it a substantive
May I
change?
ask, may I ask
Well, this
the,
is
Ms. London a
just being
question?
introduced. So you can make the change now since it's just being
With the
introduced.
second motion? With the second on the floor, do we have to re-motion?
We'd have to correct the motion, because the motion is...
I'd like to amend the motion
Okay.
and add,
Just ask a question.
sure.
I have a question just to Ms. London, or Borough. So that would put it at 4 and 3, regarding, I guess you would say, well, we could say paid or borough-related positions, and 4 to public. Is that the same ratio that we have for other committees? Because I think that is a higher number. That's over 50% to the public versus in a committee, regarding committee membership. I'm just asking a question generally. Is that number okay to have 4 public and 3 borough-related personnel, or should they be equal?
It's more of policy. I don't think there's anything that says you have to have a certain number of public, or you can't have a certain number of public. But this is, yeah, there'll be more citizen members if you increase it to 4 than the way it was structured initially.
And Mayor, to answer your question, this was, there's a motion and a second to introduce this. At this time, it would be appropriate for a motion to amend the ordinance prior to its vote for introduction.
Indeed. So I'd like to make a motion to amend the ordinance by increasing the number of members of the public from 3 to 4, thereby increasing the total number. I think that's also baked into the ordinance as well, by 1.
Is there a second for that?
Mayor, will the public get a chance to speak about this?
No, next meeting at the public hearing.
So you are going to advertise the way it's worded?
Currently, yes, because I don't have a second for the rewording.
Okay.
So you also will change,
Well, we don't have a second.
I
you
motion.
have to make more changes than just changing 3 to 4.
Oh, maybe I can't amend it. No, I should be able to amend it. But there is no second, so it's
You
not,
didn't
so
say
we're
the full
not
amendment.
going to increase it. That's fine. Whatever.
Okay, do I have a roll call to the original motion?
What's the original motion? I'm sorry.
To introduce.
Just to introduce this as it's done.
Yeah.
On the motion to introduce the ordinance as drafted and presented, Council President Good,
No, I don't find that there's any reason to do this.
Councilmember Pacheco,
No.
Councilmember Fotopoulos,
No, only because of the increase.
Councilmember McDermott,
Yes?
Councilmember Davidson,
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes.
Mayor, it appears to be 3 yes votes, 3 no votes. The vote is tied.
Yes.
Motion to introduce is adopted.
Communications by consent. I lied. Motion to authorize the clerk to publish the ordinances as introduced in the Asbury Park Press for public hearing.
Motion.
Have a second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any abstain or no?
No. I don't know.
How many noes?
I don't know, Leslie, I don't think we're allowed to vote. If we voted for...
If we voted no, we can't vote on it,
We can't
right?
vote on the public,
Right, yeah.
right?
Abstain.
Stan.
Mayor, just so the record's clear, I would request that there be a roll call vote. On the motion authorizing the clerk to publish the ordinance as introduced in the Asbury Park Press for a public hearing, the motion was made by Councilmember McDermott, seconded by Councilmember McNamara. Council President Good,
Leslie just said we couldn't vote on that.
so that is
Present?
Present.
You're doing
Councilmember.
abstention.
These.
we need to roll call or do they?
We don't get roll call.
It's we don't get roll called or we vote present, that's it.
Okay.
I'm not here.
Council members, so we are doing,
Yeah.
Council member Pacheco,
Present? I don't, you know what I'm
I think what we're saying, I think what the conversation is to be able to motion to put this in the newspaper to publish it. But if you voted against it, you're not allowed to motion to, or vote to approve it, so it would be an abstention.
Then I abstain. Whatever, obviously I can't vote.
But we have to do it individually because it's a split tie, then that has to go on record of me bringing it to 4 to make it enough, if that's how I vote. So that's why we have to do it instead.
Oh, no, I didn't know what I was supposed to say.
I'm just-
abstain.
so we're in agreement the attorney's advice is
Yes.
present?
No
Oh,
abstain.
to abstain, okay. Councilmember Fotopoulos,
Abstain.
Councilmember McDermott,
Yes?
Councilmember Davidson,
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara.
Yes. There were 3.
There are 3 votes to rights. I'll defer to the attorney.
Isn't it 3 and 3?
No, there were 3 abstentions, 3 yeses.
Aren't they no votes
Uh,
though?
Because it's a separate vote for the publication, so.
Okay. No, that's fine.
It doesn't go to majority.
3-0.
Communications by consent. We have items number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There was commentary from the public regarding number 3. There was also commentary from the public regarding number 2, and it should just be noted for future applications that come forward. Mr. Merla made some excellent points as far as that they were decorating the library property. We are currently in conversations we are currently in conversations about the use agreement of the library and whose jurisdiction it falls under. So that's why the application came to us to begin with. So that has not been rectified. We've been waiting for that for several months or several years. That's why it's a little bit different regarding to request for their certificate of insurance as well. And just for dialogue amongst the members of the council. We are still working with the JIF to see if I've requested documentation from the establishment when the organization of the Friends of the Library was first formed. Because of their classification, I don't see why it's any different than some of the other entities that serve the borough directly. But we have not received an answer from the JIF. Their preliminary answer was no, they could not fall under our insurance. But I have put in a rebuttal to that, and hopefully they will adhere to that, but we haven't had a final answer. So just to clarify, because it was questioned by a member of the public, the difference between number 2 and 3.
Can I ask a question about, oh gosh, I don't know which one it is. Number, the patriotic major. Do we have confirmation if he's paid or not?
I do not have confirmation.
Yes, to my knowledge, there has been no payment made. And just to clarify, the fee schedule that is reflected on the application does not include the mini club.
Thank you, Mayor. Is Mr. Trichetta here? Mayor, may you call Mr. Trichetta, please?
We're not open to the public, but I don't see him here, so I don't see a need for opening a motion.
I'm not doing that. I was just checking to see, because if I have questions, it's obvious that other members of the dais have questions. So I'm going to make a motion that we table this and ask Mr. Trichetta to appear if he so chooses at the next meeting so he can discuss it and answer some of the questions.
Okay.
A second. Oh.
Sorry. Sorry about that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So that leaves us with item number 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Mayor, before you do that, just want to ask Leslie, can you just check to see whether or not there's going to be, because I know he's going to bring this up, if it shows, can we charge somebody for the use of the property for erecting what he's going to be considered as a non-religious, religious scene. It's a first, like an establishment clause question. I know for like, we're not allowed to charge if the Jehovah's Witnesses want to go around, we can't charge them permit fees. Is this similar?
And I guess it goes to 2, is this deemed to be a religious statement of some sort?
That's, I guess, the secondary question. But other than that, Mayor, I agree with the pause. I just wanted to make sure that those questions would be looked at.
Because I think one of the other questions was that I had posed was if they're a nonprofit entity, this has been a constant question throughout the year about whether we can waive fees for non-tax-paying entities, so wouldn't that fall under the same thing? And if it does fall under, it's a freedom from religion organization, but if is that considered under an umbrella of religion, because the monument or the structure they're trying to put up clearly states on it, keep religion and government separate. So I'm not sure why this isn't going on a non-government property.
But that could also be viewed as a constitutional statement.
Right, I understand. So I just want to also reemphasize that we have not had any members of our constituents within the borough of Keyport request this to move forward. So the application, the applicant did not choose to write their hometown. So to me, that's also a deemed incomplete application. But we've already motioned and we can move on. So we have items number 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Excuse me, Mayor, just for the matter of record, I'm sorry. The applicant should be told that the application is incomplete. Right. Is there an objection to that?
What, that?
Actually, since we're adding stuff, this all originated as well with them self-disclosing that apparently they have public gatherings every year at the winter solstice in the mini park, so they should really, be putting that in so that the police approve it as well.
It's ridiculous.
It all coincides together apparently, so. All right, I digress again. Communication items number 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Motion.
Second.
To approve?
Yes.
Yes.
Can I have a roll call, please, Jay?
Council President Good?
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco?
Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos?
Yes.
Councilmember McDermott?
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara?
Yes.
And because I want Jay to work extra hard tonight, I was not inclusive of number 7 to receive and file, so he gets a motion and second again.
Motion second.
We roll call again, Jay, you're getting the hang of it now, so.
Council President Good?
Yes.
Councilmember Pacheco?
Yes.
Councilmember Fotopoulos?
Yes, with deep appreciation and gratitude for my longtime friend, Christine Matarese, and sadness that she's leaving. Thank you for the honor of me.
Councilmember McDermott?
Yes.
Councilmember Davidson?
Yes.
Councilmember McNamara?
Yes.
Next, we have approval of minutes of November 9th, regular meeting. I have a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any noes or abstaining? Under new business, I would like to request at the next meeting, will be listed on the agenda, the item of New Jersey Baker's Food Law that has been established this year in the state of New Jersey. And if we could just have an update, maybe Councilman Fotopoulos or Jay or Leslie, what the guidelines are for that, so our Board of Health office is clear, and that we can get something posted on the website for any inquiries for that. If we're just deferring them to Monmouth County, we don't have to have any answers tonight, but that is now in effect in the state of New Jersey, so can we please discuss that? Sure, it's the New Jersey, I think it's the Baker's Cottage Food Law. Lied, it's just a cottage food law, not Baker's Cottage, for people to be able to do preparation of baked goods or at their home with the Board of Health approval, so I think we want to be able to make sure we have that readily available for inquiries coming forward on that. Thank you. Under unfinished business, we have the 2020, sorry. Oh, yes.
as has been this year with recreation, here I am at, in the 11th hour presenting something. So last night's recreation meeting, on the line was Albert Smith, who runs the Rat Mats wrestling program that typically goes from like next week through mid-February. I'm not really sure why it just kind of came up yesterday, but apparently I guess he's already done registration and has 26 participants. And he's looking to have the borough provide the insurance. So according to Jay, that would have to be done via resolution. That's number one. Number two, there was some question as to whether or not council would authorize T-shirts. I did communicate with Mr. Smith today just to go over some stuff because this is new to me. It came out of nowhere. It wasn't on the calendar for the year. So it would be Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6 to 7:30 at the school. He has about 4 or 5 coaches that work with him and a couple of ex-wrestlers that have graduated. And I believe the registration is $70 per, and I think it's $50 for like the second household member. So I did ask whether or not there had been background checks done on any of the coaches, because obviously this is all kids, it's grades 2 through 8. And he did come back to me and said that the coaches who have been helping for 10 years. They have not done recent background checks since the pandemic. So I think that's pretty much all the information I have, which there certainly could be more questions that people have. And I'm just curious, as I said, he's looking to start this next week. And I heard about it last night, so I don't, any input would be welcome.
I mean, I can give you dialogue if you want from the history that I know about it. It was 2018, it was the same thing. They came last minute to a meeting in November when I was the council liaison. But it didn't start until the winter, so we were able to put them on, but there were questions back then as well. 2019, it was the same thing. 2019, they also applied for a micro grant to pay for the shirts. So I think that's where he was thinking that the borough would issue the payment this time, but the micro grants are not available this year. And as far as the insurance, Jay raised some questions today. Again, we have seen it advertised. We thought they got their certificate of insurance elsewhere because they did not come and make any inquiries to us. So they've been advertising this for over a month and came last night to a meeting to ask. So, but there are different things that we don't know. We don't, they operated at the school. We don't know what kind of, if the mats are new, if any of those regulations, if any of
Oh, the
those-
mats are the school mats, I did ask him.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I think, we have covered that in the past, back in 2019, 1 year for the certificate of insurance. But as far as the other questions, I think they're all valid questions. So I guess it's really a two-part question. One is about the certificate of insurance, and one is about the payment of the shirts. So I think we've beat it to death tonight as far as adding something to our insurance. Is that inclusive, Jay, or is that going to be an upcharge, or is it just an umbrella?
Yeah, I don't believe that there's, based on the information that's been presented and in light of the fact that it appears that this has been approved in at least 2 of the last 3 years, I don't believe there's any additional direct insurance charge associated with the sponsorship of this. I would certainly recommend that if it is the desire of the governing body to approve this for insurance purposes, as has been done in the past, that should carry with it a requirement that all adult participants go through the process of being fingerprinted and a background check being performed. That is a requirement of our JIF for any adults that are involved in youth activities.
Councilman Dermott?
So my first point of question, they should probably fill out the volunteer form, right? Just for us to have a record of.
But they're not volunteering with us.
Oh, that's true. Okay, well, they definitely need to have the background searches just for our internal clearance. If they don't meet this, and let's just say a person fails a background search, we need to know the consequences. If these individuals are still going to continue to coach and engage others.
They would not be permitted to be in any way involved.
That has to be communicated to the organization, right?
I guess that's a question though, what's the organization? Do we know, Kathleen?
Mat rats?
They're called mat rats, that's why.
I mean, that's the name of the program, but is it like through KYAL, or is it?
Something that I saw, and I don't know, I was able to track back to like 2017, and I just saw like Mat Rats LLC, so I don't know if that was old news, still in existence.
Yeah, my recollection was that they were their own entities, not like they're working through Pop Warner or...
Yeah, they're separate entities.
Yeah, that was my recollection, but I could be wrong.
Since they're applied for the mini grant, couldn't we just pull the mini grant application and see if they were before?
Well, that was 2 years ago, we don't know what
They are now.
organization stayed.
It's okay. But I just think the stipulations have to be made very clear on background searches, and they can't engage in minors. And I don't know if Victoria wants to add some more to this.
I think we can provide clear guidance on a background check. It's not really a real difficult process. I think you can get an appointment pretty quickly. It's on the New Jersey State Police website, and it spells it out clearly. They'll refer you to Identigo, to Ocean, and I believe there's one in Edison as well. And you can get an appointment fairly quickly. The process isn't that painful, so it's not a really hard process. I think it's possible for them to quickly get this done and move forward.
And again, if we knew before 8 o'clock last night, we would have had this on the agenda for discussion and had time to look all this up. Councilman Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. Background checks, what is the time frame? How recent do they have to be? Okay, the reason why I'm asking is because I went to Indigo and had a background check for,
So annually, they have to have a background check.
so
depending on
if it's
what-
within a year.
And there's different nature of, there's different levels of background checks that you should forgo.
So this is specific to coaching, there's a background
Let
check.
me just finish answering your
I'm sorry,
question.
so
So this is specific to where you need to go, and once you get to Identigo, they'll let you know, because you apply with a code. There's a specific code that they give you for whatever title you want. Say it's volunteer, so it's not a real hard process.
I'm familiar, okay, so they would have to, if they have already had it done for another reason, it doesn't apply, they would have to get it redone.
Like Mr. Smith, I believe he's probably has a recent background check that he could utilize through coaching. So
Right, okay.
He probably has the results on hand and can provide it.
The other question is, can we vote on a resolution tonight for the meetings, if it be the desire, and put the stipulation of the background check in there, and, that they have to, I think it might be,
I think there's a lot of.
yeah, I was just gonna say, there's a lot of moving parts here, and okay.
Come with more information.
So would be...
It is a resolution, right? It's a
To put
resolution,
them on the insurance.
and to approve.
Right, but there's two
So-
different topics. Remember, they're also asking for $400 for shirts, which is a whole different topic than.
We don't have to, again, right, the micro grant program is done. And we can,
Yeah, to add to that, in terms of the T-shirts, then that was last night at the meeting that they asked about T-shirts, but when I spoke to him today, I did specifically ask about the fees that they collect as an organization, those registration fees, and what expenses they cover, and he said it covers the singlets and the rep fees. So, whether or not they also need T-shirts on top of that, I guess that was something maybe Recreation deemed is nice, but the singlets are apparently covered by their fees.
there's probably another organization that will be able to provide them with the T-shirts, so I'm not too worried about that. I wouldn't mind getting, understanding whether or not we can put a resolution on the agenda. If not, obviously, it can't be done tonight, it's just too late. But next meeting, is that something that can be done?
This starts next week.
Well,
So my other question was, is part of the feedback that, we would need to delay the start of their program?
unfortunately, that's my gut.
Wouldn't that fall under the school's insurance? I mean, if they're there, that
Well,
seems
we've
to
done it
be-
in the past, so I don't know what prior reasons it came up that way.
Yeah, that's actually a good question, because if they're working out of the school and using the school's equipment, wouldn't the school insure them?
Well, I mean, I'm just gonna give an example, playing devil's advocate, when we have to use the school for events such as reorg, we have to provide a certificate of insurance, so we use their equipment, but we still have to provide the insurance.
If we're an additional insured at that point, though, they're still, do we know whether or not the school, I assume if the school's granted them permission to use?
Correct.
If it's an LLC though, then if I have my own camp, I'm going to use the school, I have to provide insurance because I'm not covered under the school because I'm a whole different entity.
Yeah.
So they're asking us to provide their insurance to get to the school, I guess.
But it's not the borough's insurance, because they're not really a borough entity, right?
I think that's part of the other question too, so we're sponsoring it, but we're not maintaining any of the membership fees, or that's all going through a private organization, I guess, so, I don't know, what's the pleasure here? Table?
I'd say unfortunately, I would need more information on what, I don't know, fill out something with the actual written request.
So I'm gonna throw one last thing out there, because requiring the background checks, Chief, what do they go, $50, $60, $70 per person, any idea?
Different prices, but I think they're like 35 for volunteers, 60 for government. There's different
Right.
prices
That's what I
for
was
them,
asking.
but they're under $100.
So, and that should be absorbed by the LLC, right? Yeah,
So individuals.
I mean, they're collecting the fees, right? So,
Yes.
I would pay for that.
okay. Right. So I will respond to Mr. Smith and say that the pleasure of the council is that they would need to get background checks, and then they can come back to us.
And we'll have time to look into the JIF requirement.
But come back to us, within the next few days,
Right.
the end of the week, so
It
if
could be on
a
the next-
resolution can be crafted, we can do it for next meeting,
Correct.
you know?
How about like a written request, like some kind of
I,
letter?
Yeah.
it would be nice if they submit a formal request.
Mhm.
It's like, I don't,
And once the background checks are done, does all that go directly to you, Chief? Or do we have to direct them to submit it to the chief?
It would go, it would go directly to the entity, I believe. Wherever they fill out the form, it could go right to the entity, and they can receive it, and then whoever is the holder, I believe, Albert Smith, would review them, and he would probably present them to the best.
just for clarification, those will need to be presented, those findings need to be presented to the borough for us to be able to issue out a certificate of insurance.
Yeah, it would certainly be my recommendation to the council that any adoption of a resolution that puts them on our insurance, that information be made available to us. That can be done in one of two ways. It would either be gathered, the report that's generated from the background review can either be sent to an individual, as we do in the case of pre-employment. They come directly to us, or that they could go to the organization, and then those were presented to us, and we would establish essentially an approved list based on the documentation they provide. Either way is acceptable to my way of thinking, as long as we have the documentation that the volunteers have gone through the process.
So we would need a list of the coaching staff or personnel that's going to be around the children, with the name of the entity, and to me, just for taxpayer justification for even doing this. Why are we doing this? What do they do? I know they do some great things, but, give us the reason for this. Whatever.
Okay. Is that, do you have your answer?
You got that?
Do you have your answer?
I think they'll probably write a novel, right?
I mean,
Let the kids read. Great.
Okay,
Next meeting.
under unfinished business, we have 2022 reorganization meeting. I would like to go over the 4 different options that exist. The first is Keyport Central School, which is returning it to where it used to be for several years, with a live stream option on a tripod similar to when we videoed the Juneteenth event. If we use the Keyport Central School, it's a total of 150 person maximum occupancy, and chairs must be 3 feet apart. There's no gathering allowed, so everyone must remain seated. Masks are required, and there is use of a sound system there. An alternate location is Keyport High School cafeteria, which is where we contemplated doing it last year before we had to turn it all virtual. They could do a live stream we would do a live stream with a tripod there as well. The maximum occupancy would be 50 people, maximum 3 feet apart, masks required, but they have a sound system. An additional option is totally virtual like last year, which all of these options still have the potential depending on how we move forward with numbers. And then the 4th option is the Keyport First Aid Squad, a maximum of 250 people, no social distancing, no masks, and no sound system. So
No video streaming either.
it would be a tripod, same as we would bring to the other locations. So we need a consensus on the challenge on this topic. I would ask if we could wait till we open to the public comment so that council-elect will have us weigh into before we make a final decision. So I just want to bring up the options before we opened it to the public.
Mayor, are all of them handicapped accessible?
So the Keyport First Aid Squad building is now accessible. Keyport High School cafeteria is accessible. They would have to use a lift at the main entrance, or it's not as accessible, but it meets ADA requirements. That was part of the improvements they've made there recently. And then Keyport Central School is totally accessible.
Okay, I raised that because it was an issue.
The First Aid Squad did take on the burden of the cost of doing a new entrance and putting in ADA compliant bathrooms. Jay, did I forget any of those details on the list of the items?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. Next is the flood damage. Are you giving me updates on that?
Just that, I shall let Trevor fill in the blanks. As was mentioned at the previous meeting, there is a new model flood prevention ordinance that is really a complete rewrite of the prior model ordinance that had gone through, I guess, some discussion here at the council and had actually been introduced on 1 or more occasions. Where we are today is that even if we had brought that back and had it ready for introduction, there's no planning board meeting between now and the end of the year, so we would simply have to start all over again. So given that, it was this opportunity as to whether the council, if there's any desire for any particular either designation of a committee or assignment to a committee to review this. As I said, it is a complete different format. However, it is a model ordinance that we have minimal ability to modify. There are probably, I'll say, between a half dozen and a dozen specific areas where we can choose options, the most notable of which has to do with the final determination as to what the base flood elevation plus will be. And I know for those members of the council that went through those discussions previously, there was some disagreement. In any event, really where we are today is the council ready for recommendations after the first of the year for review and simply highlighting what the options are available to the council to consider, or whether there's a desire to assign this either to an existing council committee or a special committee to really get into the weeds on it. It will, because these regulations are considered part of our development regulations, they will require, between introduction and adoption, a referral to the planning board, is my understanding.
That's correct. There's also just one more thing to add is we As we go through the CRS input process, we also need to send this to FEMA, so I do recommend that before we introduce it, if we do get any comments, we should send it to FEMA and make sure that they're okay with it before we introduce it, so that we don't have to reintroduce it if FEMA has any comments on the ultimate document. So that's just another thing we have to work into the schedule.
Should be addressed after the first of the year.
Do you need like a straw poll vote on that, or?
No, if there's no desire to
No
move forward,
objection
then
to
we
that,
will
right?
just list it for discussion in January.
And I don't see any members of the Harbor Commission present, so we'll move that as well to the next meeting. Attorney's report.
Yes, Mayor, just briefly, I had circulated to Jay, and I believe he sent it also to the council members and the mayor, just an update on the cannabis issue. CRC had a virtual informational pre-recorded webinar last week wherein they discussed and went through, there's a document that they issued called New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission, Notice of Application Acceptance for Personal Use Cannabis Licenses. And it details all the information that's very helpful for municipalities going forward, what they will be expecting potential applicants to be providing to the CRC, and generally what's going to be required from municipalities in the form of endorsement. They did emphasize that the application for the first round of licenses for cultivation, manufacturing, and testing facilities, those applications are going to start to be accepted December 15th, which is next week. And they said before December 15th, they will issue or put on their website the application that an interested party will be required to use. It's going to be filled out directly on the computer, on the website. There will be no paper applications, and they're supposed to have a tutorial type of another webinar, probably by the end of this week or early next week. There was a CRC meeting this week. It was just tonight. And I had just, someone in my office was attending it since I'm here. And she said there was really nothing worth adding to that's new. But an interesting thing, I was talking to a colleague last week, and he had mentioned what New Brunswick is doing, which is very innovative. We talked here about an application and what it's going to look like and what should be included. And what New Brunswick did, they are allowing 7 different types of licenses. And they have located specific areas where the facilities will be located. In fact, if you're familiar with New Brunswick, Eastern Avenue, which is kind of a major thoroughfare, I believe 3 retail facilities are going to be located somewhere along Eastern Avenue. And I believe its cultivation will be at Jersey Avenue. But they went through an RFP process. They wanted it to be transparent and competitive and open to as many people as they could. So they issued an RFP soliciting parties that are interested in providing a facility in their city, and set forth all sorts of criteria and a ranking system. And they received, I believe it was 15 or so interested parties. They've been reviewed, they narrowed it down. I think there maybe only 4 they're going to proceed with. I don't think any formal action has been taken yet. I'm not sure if they're waiting to see if something comes from the CRC. But it's an option to think about. If, we were talking about how to do this, I think that's a very innovative way to do it. I think once the CRC comes out with their additional information, the RFP can be embellished more to include more information. But this way, it becomes competitive. You give everyone a chance And you only will be able to endorse the number of licenses that your ordinance has. So if you get 10 interested parties, I forgot how many licenses we have, 4?
Two.
Maximum for
We don't have 2. Then when you make the endorsement, you're only going to be endorsing those. You can't do everybody. And if those fall through, then they can come down on the list. So I'm keeping an eye on New Brunswick. And another thing, I came aware of another company it's in Trenton, and they will be doing the vetting process. So this is a big industry now for everybody. They will be doing vetting of businesses that are interested in getting into the cannabis field. What some municipalities will do is go to this company and say, I'm looking for people to do retail. They will do their solicitation or whatever, vet everyone financially, past history, types of experience, and present to the municipality potential candidates for you to review. There's no cost to municipalities. The cost is put on the applicant directly to the company. So these are just some ideas that are out there now. I'm sure there'll be more, but I just wanted to share that with you, and I'll keep you posted.
Thank you. And I have a motion to open to the public with a maximum of 5 minutes each.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Actually, I'd like to call on Ms. Rainio first.
Okay, so for the reorganization meeting, I was thinking Keyport First Aid would be my first choice, and then the second is Keyport Central.
Mr. Pepperoni?
Same. That works for me.
I think because we both have big families, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people that have the same.
Okay. Thank you. Do you have any other commentary at all? Like for public comment or just that? No? Okay. Any other members of the public? Umbrella?
Wait till next meeting. John Morella, 34 Broad Street. Little disappointed with the vote tonight regarding Resolution 20921. And I'll tell you why. There's been many different donations given to the borough of Keyport over the past 30, 40 years. I know because I was involved with a lot of them. And the key word is donation. And if that, you have to weigh out the good, the bad, and the ugly. But when someone's willing to donate to the municipality, there is a cost associated with the maintenance. Let me give you a hypothetical. Tonight, the majority voted to say no to accepting a donation. Let's flip the coin on the other side. The borough authorizes application to apply for the neighborhood preservation grant funding. The borough receives that funding. The borough, then, the neighborhood preservation, goes out and purchases 3 beautiful pieces of art to be displayed in the borough of Keyport. Now, these pieces of art are being displayed on private property. Was there agreements between NPP and the private ownership of those? If they're damaged, if they're faded, when they have to be repainted, and there's no longer NPP funding, who absorbs the cost? If we're going to be a destination, which I believe we really should strive towards bringing the arts into our waterfront and having that art destination of Keyport, it's a draw. And I understand both sides, I really do. I understand I wouldn't accept a car if 2 of the wheels were flat. I want the 2 flats fixed. On the other hand, let's look long term. If we don't accept it, and they have to be moved, you know, and then we decide 5 years from now, well, you know what, we're gonna miss, bless you, we're gonna miss them, and you know, that was a draw to Keyport. It's, you know, we accepted a donation years ago from the American Legion to put that stone in front of the library. And I know, because I was involved with it. It's borough property, we maintain it, you know, if someone gets hurt. It's just like, you know, you really gotta look at the big picture. The big picture is, it's a donation, and these are volunteers that are donating it. Not paid people, volunteers. In the winter, the fire hydrants. Who says it's up to the fire department to shovel them? That's borough property. The volunteers just shovel it. In the summer, who says Public Works shouldn't pay them? Fire department pays them. They're volunteers. So it's a broad picture, and that's just my 2 cents. The other thing I wanted to ask council was, I know it was mentioned before, the shrubs that were removed on American Legion Drive, are they going to be replaced? Is it the intent to put something different at that location, or
I
that's
think there
it?
was communication with the garden club members that were the ones that also communicated with the landscaper. And Jay, do you want to give updates on that?
Yes, the plan is to develop a replanting plan for the spring.
Okay, that's fair. Any update on the First Street light pole? The light poles that are down on First Street?
Yeah, there are a number of light poles that have been ordered for replacement, and I believe that that includes those on First. And I believe it also, actually it seems that there's a continuing replacement. I think we just lost another one on Maple this past weekend, or before the weekend.
Yeah. The other item is, I was up by the Salt Dome today, and the Salt Dome is roughly a quarter full. You know, with last winter, I know we as a borough learned our lesson. We ran out of salt twice, and we had some problems. We had to go to Lumber Supermart because we didn't have a contract to purchase salt. Do we have it now? Is that in place?
We have 2 options to purchase. At our last meeting, we approved the county agreement for the purchase of materials. Also, there are vendors that are available under state contract that are our primary vendors.
Okay. We're doing the same with like backup contractors for plowing?
Backup contractors, we've been in discussions with a couple of vendors and options.
Good, good. My last item is, Mayor, and it's a serious one, and the borough email system. You got to really look into it. Let me tell you something. I wrote the mayor an email, and I tried to CC the police chief on it. It wouldn't allow me. It would not allow me. And when it, under meaning the police chief's email, every time I clicked on her email, it automatically CC'd someone from the school system. The mayor's email I never even got till I looked in my spam. And then there was 2 of them that I had sent her before, and said, that's strange. She didn't even send me an email back. Both were in spam, and I'm not alone. There's other people out there. So I did, in all fairness, CC the police chief under her personal. And the mayor, said, John, I just deleted that because of the fact it was her personal. But she didn't know what I was saying was, I tried to email Shannon under her police chief at Keyport. It wouldn't allow me. It just kept BCCing a member of the school, an official from the school. And it's kind of weird, but I tried it again today, and it did the same thing. But all the emails that are going back to people, it's not just me, and Rose let it happen, and Ron had it just kicked back to spam. So something's wrong with the emails.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I have begged and begged and begged for this to be fixed. So hopefully, in the beginning of the year, it'll actually be able to get done.
I hope so.
When other things aren't being distracted. These are all the things, that and several other things, instead of all the distractions.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, one last question. The Drug Alliance Coordinator, Victoria? Did they hire somebody?
They have not yet. You've gotten applications. I know that there's been concerns about the
grant funding.
The grant funding. It's
That has
much
not been
less this year.
finalized yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it is on our radar.
Any other members of the public? Mr. Straub?
Jack Straub, 235 Main Street. Since this is the first winter under COVID that Borough Hall is open, has any consideration been given to some kind of a policy in Borough Hall, either masks, vaccination, anything like that?
It's the same policy of when we open in July.
Yeah, can we discuss that? Yeah, there's been a lot of consideration. At this time, there's been no recommendation from me to change the current status.
So Borough Hall is completely open, no masks, no vaccines, is the policy?
There is no employee mandate for vaccination.
I'm talking about the public, but tonight.
You asked the question in general.
Okay.
We have, the borough facility includes employees as well as the public. There is also no requirement for patrons, the public coming in to be mandate required. I have considered various options. We do recommend that those that are not vaccinated to wear masks, the public coming in. We are not completely open. We are working on what I would call modified regular operations, in that facilities have been altered back when we first opened to provide for physical separation as well as physical barriers when appropriate. And private offices have also been closed to non-employee use. We have a conference room that's available for any meetings that need to take place, including this room where we can socially distance more readily.
So there's nothing kind of on the table as far as changing?
Well, again, I think that it's something that is under continuous monitoring. I will tell you that obviously we all read the papers. There are a number of potential issues out there, but we have not made any change to date. Now that could change tomorrow.
Sure. I mean, right now it's not a problem. It's not overly crowded, but I mean, up there you're fine. You've got partitions and everything. But say we used to have the Manchester development when this was packed. Those of us here don't have the luxury of what you have up there. So I'm just kind of thinking forward.
Well, and again, we've had consideration, as you heard the discussion this evening. There's a reorganization meeting scheduled that you notice that the option that was given did not include this room, because there is an expectation that based on the turnout, that this facility would be woefully inadequate in terms of size. So we've looked at other options.
And as you mentioned, that those different facilities, were there 3 mentioned or 4 mentioned?
3 physical and 1 virtual.
Oh, okay. Oh, 1 virtual, that's right. The discrepancies between masks, no masks, that's by building, or one is the school? Is that why the school requirement?
I think the answer to that is yes. The school facility indicated that.
So it's building by building, basically. Okay.
Can I just clarify that, because we were very clear on the Board of Ed articulation meeting on that. So the school guidelines, when there's students in there, are what we're following. So because they would have to reopen back on Monday, it would be inappropriate for us to use different guidelines than what the school is mandated by the state to use.
And the first aid building doesn't have those guidelines?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Wallen?
George Wallen, 54 2nd Street. Jay, where are we at with the dumpster enclosures?
It's still in the enforcement stage.
So we have a new enforcement, and that was not bumped to the top of the list, being that it's an ordinance 5 years now.
I wouldn't say that it was at the very top of the list, but it was in the upper half.
Okay. I'll ask again later. 149 West Front Street, that was pulled, and it's not put underneath old business. Any reason why?
There were items or questions that had been raised, and when those are answered, it'll be presented back for the council's consideration.
Well, the documentation that I offered was very clear in what should go forth, what questions should be done.
I'm not sure.
You were directed by Mike to check with the borough attorney. So did you do that?
I'm sorry, he was directed by who?
Mike, tax assessor? Sorry.
It wasn't a directive, it was a suggestion. But the matter involves both the attorney, the engineer, as well as the assessor. And when that is coordinated, it'll be back and presented to the council for the council's consideration.
Well, if you look at the lot 4, those 2 lots are pulled. They're back on borough.
Is that what's being reviewed? Or is that done?
The error was corrected. What is presented before the council and was tabled was the question about the adjustment.
Reimbursement of money.
Correct.
Okay. The new stop signs, how come we need flashing ones?
Is it cost prohibitive? About $2,000 for every 2 that are ordered?
Well, you just saved $3,000 by doing away with the deputy recycling coordinator.
Mayor, if I may address that. In those locations where we have used the flashing, right, I believe that those had been areas identified as high need, mostly on major thoroughfares. There had never been any, I would say, lengthy discussions as to upgrading all of the new signs to be flashing. But if there are locations that are determined to be necessary, or there's a request that that be reviewed, it would be.
Well, I think throughout the borough, making these new 4-way stop signs might be an issue.
Is that a request that they be all flashing?
I think it's a concern, yes. And we talked about the borough guys not finishing the striping. Where we are with that?
Which striping?
Yes, I called Jay in regards to the borough went out and painted stripes with the new stop signs were going to be.
Stop bar? The stop bar?
Stop guard,
The
okay.
stop bar, is that what you're talking about, the white?
Yes, okay, I didn't know that.
I didn't know what, I just wanted to.
All right, no, I didn't know there was a term for it.
No,
but
it's okay.
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know if you meant like literally
Anyway,
line striping,
we
sorry.
painted them, and then we didn't paint them. So we have stop signs up and no stop cars.
The information that I have is that all of the stop bar painting was completed last week.
Well, you might want to take a ride down 2nd Street.
2nd Street, is that the area of Green Grove?
It's, there is none on Green Grove.
Yeah.
There are 2 stripes there, but
There are a couple of locations that were waiting county authorization, but all of the other ones, it's my understanding that the striping was complete.
okay.
If there's something on 2nd...
Well, I sent you photos.
Well, that was, you sent the photos before...
No. I took a picture. I got it on my phone if you want to see it.
Well,
The photo I sent you was my car, ghost stripe line, or whatever else your terminology is, and a stop sign.
And you sent that to me when?
I'll have to look.
No, but I think it was last week, and subsequently I've been told that all the painting has been finished.
Okay.
But if there's one that was missed, I'd be interested to know that.
I'll send you a photo in the morning.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Rowland. Any other members of the public? Mr. Lane?
Michael Lane, just building a little bit on Mr. Walling's comment on the lots 20 and 21 being borough property. The analysis needs to take into account that our open space and recreation ordinance designates these as borough open space recreation property. And if you go back and look at the history of us designating, I think it's for the state Green Acres, those lots have been continuously identified as borough property. And so that would have to be if that's not true, that would all have to be unwound, and we'd have to provide replacement property twice the size. The maintenance of the drainage ditch next to the Henry Hudson Trail, what's the update on that?
Trevor, do you mind answering?
Yes, I know the county's been out there. They have started doing the cleaning between, I believe it's Broad and Green Grove. They also clean the ditch between Green Grove to the pipe that goes underneath the Henry Hudson Trail. And then they're going to be continuing from Fulton to the dead end on 3rd Street. So the county has been out there. They will be continuing that as soon as their forces are able.
Have you inspected what they've done?
I was out there one day when it was raining, when several county people were there. We looked at the area between Green Grove to the Henry Hudson Trail, but I have not looked at the rest of it yet.
Because I took a walk along the trail. George, when we do that, a couple of weeks ago?
Yes, sir.
And there wasn't any evidence of any improvement at that point in time. So that's great if it's going to happen. Also, finally, the 5G network, the issue of our utility poles and their strength and review of that. What's the status of that?
I actually have an update that I forgot about. We received an email from JCPenney this week that Keyport is a list of 6 municipalities that they are going to be doing infrastructure upgrades, including inventory and looking at all of the wooden poles and wiring and treescaping. Unfortunately, it's a 1.5-year project, but they're hoping, I did request a meeting in the first quarter of the year. So I know that's not really direct to your question, but that is an update because I know other members of the public have asked for that, and we did push for that, so that we are on the list. So that's, I know it's an indirect answer to your question. I forgot to mention that earlier.
What I want to do is build on your response, and I think that's great that the activity is taking place. But it gets back to, we really need to go back to what we used to have as a monthly status report, where these issues, which are still open, would be listed, and if there's a sentence or two that stated just what you stated, some activity is taking place, we really need that, and the council needs that, so they can evaluate what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Mr. Graham?
Homer J. Graham Jr., 22 St. Peter's Place. On this application for use of borough property from Mr. Patrick Tricetta, if I were this board and council, if I were this borough council, especially Madam Mayor, I would be very careful in dealing with this guy, because this is a guy in the past that was on Keyport social media and stirred up some controversy, and he was thrown off of social media as a result. I was one of the targets of his controversy or whatever, but I would be very careful in dealing with this guy. He can make, hope I'm wrong, but he can make potential trouble. Second thing is on possible future Veterans Committee meetings. Are we going to have them next year or what?
We'll definitely have them. We'll have one in the first quarter of next year. I don't have a date set yet.
Okay. And Madam Mayor, I made a recommendation to you about having a parking space for the Medal of Honor winner along our American Legion drive and stuff like that. I would seriously keep that in mind too.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Can I have a motion to close to the public? All in favor?
Mayor, I've got some questions. If that's okay? Jay, what's the update on Office 365? We budgeted for that, and what we were going to do either Office 365 or then there was the assumed it was I was informed that we were going to do Google.
Google Government has been what's been discussed for 3 years straight. So.
Yeah, I have proposals for both, and they are tied into the email chain. And that's something that happened for January.
Okay, so it's going to happen, and the mayor alluded to something. Why didn't it happen this year?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I will tell you that 365 is what was proposed early on, and we wanted to look at a comparison with Google, and it took some time to for that to come forward.
Okay.
And that we actually didn't see until, I believe it was September into October.
Okay. The dumpsters at the dumpster enclosures at Green Grove, one of the conditions of approval for that resolution was that they had to redo the enclosures in the existing property at Green Grove. That was the planning board resolution. In piggybacking on what Mr. Walling brought up, would you mind reaching out to them? If you want the resolution, I'll give it to you, and seeing what the progress is on getting those done.
If I can update you on that, they were done, and then not long after they were done, the ones that are closest to the newer apartments, from the older apartments,
Yeah.
that they were subject to an accident, and I don't know that the repairs were ever made, so I agree with you on that.
Right, and the ones that are midway down on the left, I don't think were ever done. I think the ones down on the end were, right? Yeah, well, we're talking about the same thing, and we want them done, so.
Councilman, if you could provide me with that information, I
You bet.
would just, Mr. Walling had been kind enough to provide me with a number of dumpster enclosure areas, and I don't recall that that was one of them.
Well, that one was hit by somebody, as the mayor pointed out. So therefore, I wouldn't show you that because they probably filed something with their insurance to get it all fixed.
Right.
Mayor, okay, I can write a letter on that because I did discuss that with them at some point. I believe they got hit by a drunk driver
That's right, I'm aware of that.
before we released their developers agreement, right before then, so I'll follow up with them with a letter and give them a call.
So that's on your list?
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will have a closed session this evening. Leslie, do you want to explain?
Yes, we have resolution 252-21 to go into closed session to discuss attorney-client privilege issues related to contract negotiations.
While we will not be going into, in the closed session, there is a proposal that might be voted on when we come out, correct?
Correct, that's the resolution that was initially pulled at the top of the meeting.
Can I have a motion to go into closed session?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.